Hello friends, imitates Jenkins' video style introduction in the hopes that it brings the video more views, because even though he doesn't like to self-promote, he's still desperate for attention here, bringing you another Dota 2 video. I see why he does it, it's pretty fun. But, funny introduction and thumbnail aside, this is essentially an itemization video on why you might get the Quelling Blade on support. It's crazy, on a support channel? Unheard of. Now the reason we're mentioning Jenkins is because he did make a video on this 2 or 3 months ago. Time isn't real anymore, so I've lost track of it. But he made a video explaining why Quelling Blade might be a mandatory item for supports. And I'm not going to reiterate everything he said because that would be copywriting, and who likes that? But also, you should just check it out anyways. It's a good video. But it left me with some questions because he had 3 main points. You get some new ward locations, new juke paths, and new gank paths. And I thought that was great. Quelling Blade is cheaper now. You have your backpack so you can get it and just swap it in and out as you need it once you start needing those slots. But I wasn't sure, when do I get it? And after thinking about the Quelling Blade and what it does for you, I realized that there's another point that Jenkins didn't really mention that I want to bring to you in this video, is that it can actually improve your laning stage. And I think this is actually the most important part about Quelling Blade on supports, and it justifies starting with a Quelling Blade in certain matchups, which we're going to talk about. And then those 3 main points after that, the ward locations and the new paths, that's kind of like a bonus to me about, okay, cool, I've got a Quelling Blade, here are some new options. But for me, having this increased laning presence is actually what makes the Quelling Blade good. Let's break down the stats on Quelling Blade so I can try to explain why I think it's now a viable starting item. Because you only have 600 gold at the start of the game, and so you have to choose very carefully what you purchase. The items you buy have to help you in the lane. A Quelling Blade is 130 gold. This is a big part of it because it used to be 200, and that was a third of your starting gold, and that was quite expensive. But now 130, that is much more affordable. Now, the reason the price got reduced is because the item got nerfed. It no longer gives you as much damage as it used to. But wait, that does not affect us as supports because we very rarely look to secure last hits with our right clicks. It's not really what we do in the lane. And if we do, it's usually trying to secure the range creep, and we cast a spell for that. So we don't really care about this passive damage, so who cares about the nerf? Now, the ability to cut wards and techies mines, random stuff like that, that did get removed, and that does affect us as supports. That is unfortunate. However, I still think it's okay, because what did not get affected by the nerfs at all is this active chop tree. 4 seconds, you destroy a tree you target within 350 cast range. That tree breaking ability literally lets us mold the map into something we want to play. Because when I was thinking about it, I realized that there are not really mechanics. It's like a trick / tip in the lane where you use the trees, the pathing and vision block they provide to play the lane. So, for example, you have a melee versus ranged matchup. Melee heroes have a 50% chance to block 16 damage every time they get auto-attacked. This comes out to 8 damage every attack. Now, ranged heroes, they have no damage block. Now, follow me on this. Having damage block is better than not having damage block. And so if you imagine this melee hero who has the exact same stats as a ranged hero, let's not think about spells right now or items. You just have the exact same starting stats, and you stand next to each other and auto-attack. This benefits the melee hero because they have this inherent 50% chance damage block. So why aren't we all playing melee heroes, right? This is busted. No, it's balanced. Because melee heroes, as the name implies, have a short attack range. 150 for the most case. But a couple exceptions, let's not worry about them. Then ranged heroes have longer attack range, as their name implies. Most of them are 400 or higher, the max being 700 with techies. A couple have a little less than 400. Again, let's not worry about these niche examples, the extremes. Having more attack range is generally beneficial because you might attack from 500 range away, and the melee hero just they can't retaliate. It's too short. You have a free auto attack. So who cares that they might block a bit of damage? You're getting free damage in. And so we can generalize this matchup, melee versus ranged, in that melee heroes want to get right on top of a ranged hero and then trade right clicks because their damage block benefits those kind of trades. And ranged heroes, they don't want that, so they try to attack from far away. Going back to that trick we mentioned, melee heroes will try to sneak their way around trees to get right on top of the ranged hero. Because if you just approach from an open map, the ranged hero sees you coming and they just back away and you never get up to them. This is called kiting. So we try to circumvent that by sneaking up to them. You might be invisible. That would be one way to do it. But if you don't have that, you just have to use Fog of War from these trees in the lane. Quelling Blade cuts those trees down. So if you are a ranged hero and you just remove the trees, you now have an open playing field. And the melee hero is going to struggle to get on top of you and find the beneficial right-click trades that they want. Now, of course, it's not like we only use right-clicks. There are spells, there are items. You might get boots and literally just run at the ranged hero faster. And that does come into play as well. Someone like Tiny, he doesn't really trade right-clicks. He just gets on top of you and does his avalanche toss combo, and that just does a massive amount of your health or just straight up kills you. And that is our number one concern. If the melee hero gets on top of me and they would do a ton of damage, then I need to avoid that. And historically, that depended on using wards or having higher movement speed to just stay away. But now I'm putting forward this idea that we can just cut the trees and see them, and they can't sneak up on us. And then we factor in that right-click part, where if the enemy is melee and we're ranged, it kind of benefits us to still see them approaching us so that we can just not be on top of them. Usually this is not so extreme, right? Trading a couple right-clicks does not usually deplete like 80% of your health, whereas some of these spells will, like Clockwerk who gets on top of you. In those cases, you might just die 100 to 0. So that's the extreme case where we definitely want a Quelling Blade, but then the melee versus ranged matchup. And then as a bonus, in terms of improved laning, you get some new pull paths. So the trees kind of limit the way you can pull creeps, and we're limited to certain timings in certain directions. But if you just cut some of these trees away, you kind of have a more direct path to the lane, which frees up some of the strict timings you have to hit. It can also help you stack camps later on, but let's not worry about that because we're talking about the laning stage right now. First, let me demonstrate general kiting. Let's say something like this happens. Now Tiny's running at me. I know I'm safe at this tower. Now I can turn around and chase him a bit. Now I can't see him. While he was running at me, I knew exactly where he was, and I could just attack him. And when he gets close, I back up. And when he has to turn around, I resume attacking him. But now I don't know where he is. And it's scary to chase him because Tiny's combo would literally do like all my health. All right, literally do. It's like half my health, right? But if he was a little higher level, if he was level 3, I am very close to dying as a CM. This is a lot. You know, even if I cast my 2 spells on him and I auto attack once, like, he's happy to continue right-click trading me. He wanted me to walk up like this. Now, I might be able, instead of chasing directly like that, let's turn these trees back. Let's say Tiny was hiding there again. What if instead of walking this way and getting comboed on, I move up like this, and now I see Tiny. Now, once again, I am free to attack him, and as he approaches, I back away. All of that is possible because I had this nice little path to see him. Now let's imagine the lane. I've disabled the creep so they don't get in the way too much. But pretend the lane is going like this, and I want to harass this axe. I have to do some creep aggro tricks because otherwise I'll aggro these creeps and they'll come attack me, and I don't want that to happen. So what I'd rather do is play in this area. Now if you are a support player, you should learn to use your tangos to cut these trees. Whether you have a Quelling Blade or not, cutting this tree is very useful to move in and out of the tower and be able to come over here. Now this is great. Now I can attack axe and the creeps aren't in my way, but as you can see, Tiny is here. And many 4 positions should try to prevent this from happening. And so Tiny sees me, and he's going to run at me. And now I know, oh, I can't be here. I have to hide. Let's say Tiny, I lose sight of him like this. I don't want to come through the lane, because that's annoying. But now I'm really scared to walk up here, because Tiny could be right here. He could be right here. He is. I put him there. But if you're a support, you don't know that. Now, maybe you walk up here, but what if he had run over, and you happen to run into him, and then you lose 2/3 of your health? You're pretty much done, unless you have a salve, right? How are you supposed to lane with 1/3 of your health? You can't. Now, having a ward could help. Say you ward over here. Now I see Tiny. Now I know he's there. But I can't really auto-attack him. Otherwise, I'll reveal the fact that I have a ward. Because we should not have vision of Tiny. Juggernaut's over here. I'm here. Creeps are here. Why would we see him unless we have a ward? So I could get a free couple auto-attacks in, but I am going to lose this ward. Now I could now use it to walk over here because I know Tiny's safely over there. But you won't always have a ward. Often it goes to the mid lane and you're off lane. And so I don't have a ward. Now I can't do that. Now what do? This is where Quelling Blade comes into play. If you just cut these trees, I'm still under this tower. He can't approach me. And now I can see him. Now I can get off a couple free auto attacks. And now he has to back away. Now he comes over here. Oops. Hey, look. There he is. He still cannot approach me. So what does he do? He has to come out even further. I could cut this tree, sure. Or, hey, look at this. Isn't this similar to this path over here? I can walk to the left and attack. And I'm not that close where he could combo me. Okay, actually, this is kind of close enough where Tiny could combo you. But for the sake of example, let's pretend it's like a Clockwerk or something else instead. You get the idea, where I could cut these trees over here over time. And now I'm like approaching from a different angle. I'm keeping my distance, but I'm spotting him without necessarily cutting every single tree. And you don't want to cut every single tree. Imagine, in fact, let's just do it. Let's cut all these trees down, and we're playing the lane like this. And it's time to pull, and I start to walk this way. Even if the enemy team's not keeping track of the timer, and they see you just walk away like this, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to ask, where's that Crystal Maiden going? She had full health and mana. You shouldn't be like that. You should be using some of your mana. But she's healthy enough to lane, and she's just walking away? No. She has to be pulling, and they're going to come interrupt you. But if you leave some trees up, like so, and you just cut some of them, now we still get that benefit I was talking about, where we can see Tiny, and we know when it's safe to come up here. But let's say Tiny's like more over here. Now I'm laning, and then I hide behind this tree. Now Axe, like, this is normal, right? I'm just hiding behind the tree. You don't know where I am. They don't necessarily expect anything. And now I have a couple seconds to move over, and they don't see me leaving. And now I do the pull. And after a couple seconds, they might realize, wait, is this CM behind this tree? He runs over, he sees, wait a minute, she's not behind the tree. Where could she be? She could be pulling. But after that, you've already had some time to get the pull off. It's already started. And those few extra seconds are really good. So you don't want to necessarily cut every single tree, but you want to cut yourself these kind of like open paths, like so we can spot where the Tiny is safely. Look, there he is. Now I know I can come out here, or I can't come out here. You know, if he's right here, he cannot just hide behind a tree like right here, and I'm too scared to walk out. And as a way to justify the price of Quelling Blade, I mean, think about it. If he can't damage me, I can do with a little less regen. I don't have Iron Branches to tank up to survive his combo, but actually, I'm just never going to get comboed if I see him and I avoid him. I mean, you won't avoid every combo, but you get the idea. And what about damage? You know, what if I had bought another mango or two with the Quelling Blade so I can cast spells? Well, by seeing Tiny, I'm going to get some free auto attacks off. And why do I need to cast spells to harass if I'm getting these free auto attacks off? Getting 3, 4, 5 free auto attacks that I never would have before when these trees were up. And in the past, I might have had to use a spell to kind of spot if Tiny was there and do a bit of damage. I don't really recommend doing that on Crystal Maiden. But then you're just stuck behind this lane because you're not sure where Tiny is. But now with the Quelling Blade, I see Tiny. I know, oh, I can't walk out. I can't harass this Axe right now. But you know what? I'll just harass this Tiny because Tiny's right here. Now Tiny doesn't want to take free auto attack, so he walks away. And now, oh, hey, Now I can come harass his axe. I see Tiny run back. Oh, I'll just back off too. All because of the Quelling Blade. Guys, can I get an F in the comments for my headphones? I put them down for 10 seconds to go close my doors, and now the right side doesn't work. They've died in the making of this video. There was a casualty. Let's talk about the heroes now that you might buy Quelling Blade against. Two things. First, Quelling Blade, when we're thinking about it, it's mainly about who the enemy support is, because let's look at the lane. The carry, usually somewhere here, offlaner somewhere here, and you know where they are because they're in the lane, and they're going to focus on last hits and not really run at you as the support that often. But it is the supports who play on this side, and they kind of chase each other around. So for example, Clockwerk as a 3, I may not buy Quelling Blade because I know where he is, and I'm not worried about him surprising me in the trees right here. But Clockwerk as a 4, well, he's going to dedicate a lot of his time to chase me and to hide in these trees and wait for me to come out so he can start beating me to death. And so then I would think about a Quelling Blade. And so it's about the supports more than the offlaners, but the offlaners to an extent still, or the offlaners and the carries apply to a certain extent. Second, this list is a bit theoretical, I'll admit. This top tier up here, I'm pretty confident about this. I've tested it several times against these heroes. As for everyone else on this list, there's only so much I can control who my opponents play, and I've been trying to buy Quelling Blade as much as I can to test this out, but I haven't gotten to do multiple tests against like some of these heroes. So this part is in theory. So feel free, test it out yourself, let me know, give me some feedback. But at least for this top tier, I think it's safe to buy. Let's start with Treant Protector. And I say this as a Treant spammer. I think it is worth it to buy a Quelling Blade every game you know that he is in your lane. So sometimes it's not clear because he could be a 5 or a 4. But if you do know, I think it's worth it. So I want to take a look at this. I'm playing Disruptor versus a Treant Protector. I think we should lose this lane because LC is very good against melee heroes in general, and she has Press the Attack to deal with my Thunderstrike, which is a large majority of my laning presence. And I want to make sure that, okay, LC will be tough enough to deal with. Let's make sure Treant Protector does not have a great time in this lane. And so I rush out of lane, I rush to the lane as quickly as I can, and you see me start cutting down these trees because I hate people, and I hate you if you cut these trees, if I'm a Treant player. Because I'm supposed to protect the trees. But it also lets me play in the lane. And if I don't have these trees, well, let's see. Now, he doesn't have these trees. You're going to see how he has to play because he doesn't have them. Now, she doesn't take Press the Attack level 1, so that helps us. She should watch that video I made. He wants to harass me. He has to throw it all the way over here. And I make a bit of a mistake. I didn't mean to aggro these creeps, so I have to end up running through here, and I almost die for it. Pay no mind to that. That was just my own mistake. I was a little too excited to harass the LC. Look at this Treant, though. He's always got to be over here, because now he's up here next to our tower. That doesn't feel very safe. He can't play there for very long. So he's going to eventually make his way back to this right side all the time. And over here on this right side, he just doesn't, like, I'm over here. He'll never really touch me. And that lets me harass the offlaner for free. And if he ever does run over like he is now, I see him. I have plenty of time to get away. He hit me with the Nature's Grasp that time, sure. But he never got to me to right-click. And that is what Treant Protectors need to do because they have a crazy amount of damage at the start. And you notice he even got an Orb of Venom. He has not gotten to apply this very often because he's just on the other side of the lane from me. Because I've cut down all his trees. Well, not all of them, but, you know, enough trees to make him realize he can't really play over here like he wants to. Let's come back to these heroes now. So some other heroes, we mentioned Tiny as an example, Clockwerk. This hero list up here is that if they get on top of you, you're probably going to die or lose a massive amount of your health. So if Tiny combos you or tosses you to his teammates, Clockwerk traps you, Tusk gets on top of you with Tag Team, like, you're going to take so much damage, and you can't really fight them. Pudge, he's not very good right now. The only way Pudge can really play is by landing hooks. And if he doesn't land hooks, he's just not very useful. And so, by cutting down those trees, let's look over here. What Pudges might do, they might stand here and try to hook you under their tower, and then you're trapped in these trees, and the tower kills you. Or the other side, he stands over here, hooks you out from your tower where you think you're safe, and you're trapped between these trees. You've already used your tangos, and you're just stuck between Pudge and the trees. The offlaner comes over and they kill you. Having the Quelling Blade solves that in two ways. For one, by removing these trees, if he hooks you, you just have a direct path back to your tower or out of the tower, and you don't have to run around awkwardly and give the enemy a long time to hit you and kill you. And if you cut down these trees, you're just going to see Pudge on the other side. Maybe he still lands a hook if you're not a very fast hero, but you'll see it coming, and that'll give you the most time to react. And if Pudge can't land a hook, he's not doing anything else in the lane. Not right now. Now Mars, to an extent, this applies if Mars is the offlaner or the 4 support. You have to be very conscious of where you position in the lane against Mars because his spear will stun you. And so let's look at this lane here. Imagine these trees are still here. If Mars is standing here, I can't really stand over here or here because I could be speared into these trees and stunned, and then they kill me or do a lot of damage. So I always have to stand kind of straight down so that when the spear hits me, I just get pushed back and I don't get stunned. If you cut these trees, though, now your carry can stand more in this area, and you have a bit more flexibility in the lane, and you're not so scared about getting speared by Mars. So I think that aspect of it is really strong. If you take away his ability to stun you in lane, he's still really strong in the lane, but at least you're probably not going to get stunned and killed, unless you position badly. Now, all these other heroes can be summarized in the fact that if they get on top of you, you're not likely to die if you're relatively full health. So, like, if you're full health and these guys get on top of you, you're going to take a lot of damage or die. If Ogre gets on top of you, it's pretty annoying, but Ogre works as this war of attrition kind of support because he has high armor and high regen. He doesn't kill you in one burst. It's a long period of constant harass. So it kind of helps to be able to see him, but it doesn't feel as important. Like if I walk out and, oh, Ogre's there, he hits me once or twice, you know, it's unfortunate, but I will literally survive. And so maybe I don't need to spend 130 gold on a Quelling Blade. Doom in the same way, he's more of a slow burn hero. Literally, he tries to slowly scorch you down to death. Not very common as a 4 right now anyway, so I put him on the list because he's melee, you know, but whatever. Bounty Hunter, Janata is annoying to get hit by, but you kind of know when he's going to do it, right? Because it's a 12-second cooldown at level 1, 9 seconds at level 3. You kind of know when it's up, and you just need to avoid the guy. And if he does get a hit off on you, again, you're probably not going to die because after Janata goes on cooldown, he does not have that much damage. And the thing is, even if you cut all the trees and see where Bounty Hunter is, he can get his invis level 2 and still walk up to you and hit you. So it doesn't feel so important to get a Quelling Blade, but it can be useful to keep him away and make sure he doesn't get those free Janata strikes off on you. Or if he's going to, at least make him use his invis. A Void Spirit, another melee hero. It doesn't feel as good against Void Spirit because he has some gap closers, and so, well, it's not the best gap closer, right? But he can cast Aether Remnant out. The reason I think it's helpful is because there are a couple restricted pathways from the trees, and if he sees you walk into those, it essentially sets up his Aether Remnant, where he knows you have to walk in the set path, and so he lines up the Aether Remnant. If you cut those trees down and give yourself more flexibility, then I think it helps when playing against Void Spirit. Mirana, it does not feel as good against ranged heroes, because frankly, if she sees you and you see her, she'll just hit you anyways because she's a ranged hero. The big thing with Mirana, and why she's on here when most other ranged heroes are not, is because her arrow to stun you is a big part of her lane. And she'll often try to line it up so that it pops out of the tree suddenly and you have very little time to react. If you cut some of the trees, you'll see the arrow coming and you'll have a bit more time to react and not get stunned for 3.5 seconds and die in the lane. Dark Willow, similar to his Aether Remnant, it's very hard to hit Bramble Maze if the opponent is in the open and you have no one to set up for you. The easiest way to hit Bramble Maze is when they walk through trees in a restricted pathway and then you throw it on top of them. So if you cut those, you kind of clear that out. Nature's Prophet, You don't need Quelling Blade against Nature's Prophet right away, but eventually it will be useful because it cuts Sprout and lets you get away. It's kind of this budget force staff to deal with Sprout in the early game, and I highly recommend getting it against Nature's Prophet eventually, but you don't really need it as a starting item. So if just Nature's Prophet, like I said, don't need it right away. But if you're kind of on the fence about Quelling Blade, maybe there are some melee heroes in the game, and you know there's a Nature's Prophet in the game as well, and that can help you decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to need it eventually, let me just buy it at the start. Techies, his attack range is really long, and so even if you have the trees, he can probably still hit you when you can't hit him. So cutting it down so you both see each other, it doesn't really hurt you in that regard. And the fact that his attack damage is so low. The way it does help, though, is that you can see him charging Blast Off, or you can see him place mines. Well, okay, let me clarify that. What he likes to do is to place mines in the trees so that you can't see them, and by the time you like walk around the trees, they explode. So if you cut the trees into open areas, that can help you find the mines, and if you then kill the mines, that gives you 25 gold per mine. That helps to pay off the Quelling Blade on its own, and you avoid taking this massive chunk of damage. So that can help against techies. Now, all of these heroes, I don't feel it's really necessary. I mean, there's a massive list of all the other heroes not on here that you don't need to buy Quelling Blade, but the reasons I don't think it's so good, Elder Titan kind of advertises when he's going to run at you because he casts Astral Spirit, and you know he's about to run at you and beat you down. Undying, in the same way, he doesn't need to get right on top of you. He is also this hero that slowly wears you down by stealing your strength, and that has a cast range, so he doesn't need to get right on top of you. And eventually he will just run at you once he has some strength and you've lost it, but you kind of know when that's going to happen because you've lost a lot of strength. And so either way, if you see them coming at you, you can't really fight. So I don't... Like, the idea of Quelling Blade to me is like, I can see the hero, I can fight. I see these heroes, I still can't fight them, and I'm not going to. Now, these three right here, they all have gap closers. They have ways to get on top of you. And so it doesn't, like, if they see me, they could still get on top of me. Yeah, it gives me a bit more time to react. I see the Spirit Breaker charging in, so I can move away further. But to me, since I know they can get on top of me if they want to, it feels a little better to have stats to help me survive against these heroes. Nyx, Earthshaker, Magnus, they don't do that much in the lane. They don't pose that much of a threat to you in terms of like a direct right-click harass trade because they don't hit that hard. They can still set up your death for sure, like with a stun or a skewer out of position, but I don't know. The Quelling Blade just doesn't feel as useful to me against them. Now you have some ranged heroes like Lich, Snapfire, Weaver. They're just representing the general trend that against ranged heroes, it just doesn't feel as useful. Wind Ranger, I will say, Shackle Shot, it can be kind of useful because, you know, Shackle Shot has a long duration, so if you remove some of the trees, maybe you won't get stunned that way. But there are still creeps, other heroes you can get shackled to, and most Wind Rangers do not get Shackle Shot until like level 3 or 4, and so, like, do you need to start Quelling Blade? Probably not. Timbersaw, a similar deal as Treant Protector, where if you cut some of those trees, it feels a little safer because it limits. Like, you don't have to be so scared of him using Timber Chain to get right on top of you and then doing a bunch of bonus damage with his Whirling Death. But you'll never cut all of his trees, and I don't know. Later on in the game, you can make some, like, cool Reddit clip-worthy play where you, like, cut the tree he's trying to chain to and he misses it. Yeah, you know, but it doesn't feel like you need to start Quelling Blade against Timbersaw. You're only limited by your creativity in how you can use Quelling Blade to cut new paths, because there are literally thousands of trees in this map. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am going to highlight a couple that I think are pretty useful, considering we're usually in one of the side lanes. This little pocket right here, most people know the only entrance is here and here. So if you cut this tree, it actually gives you a way to walk out like this. And so, for example, one way you might use this is if you're defending the tower, you run back here, you know that they want to come dive you, so you come wait here, and when you see, because you have tower vision, you see one guy running here, one guy running here, Now you walk out this way. Maybe you cut another couple trees. Maybe you just walk out this way. And as long as they don't have someone like Ember Spirit or Storm Spirit, you're probably safe. Now it can also be useful because this little pocket right here, the only entrance is in and out this way. But now by cutting this, you actually give yourself another path to move around. Or say you teleport back here and the enemy knows you kind of have to walk out this way. But with a Quelling Blade and a bit of time, I know I have the cheat on to not have to wait. But if you're willing to wait a couple seconds to cut through some of these trees, now you can pop out this way. Maybe you're Jakiro with Ice Path. So they think they're safe from this distance, but now you walk over here and now you can actually Ice Path further along. Just some ideas on cutting these trees. And of course, some of the trees that you should cut with your tangos anyways, you can now cut with a Quelling Blade instead. Now, pull paths are also a little bit opened up. So say your carry doesn't cut this tree for you, you're out of tangos, you can cut this yourself. And you have access to the pull at 26 this way or 30 at this way. And you know what? If you cut a couple more trees, that actually gives you the flexibility to pull the creeps this way and not get lost. Technically, if you cut enough trees like this, you can also pull down this way. It's pretty hard, though. Maybe in the future, they'll change the timing and it'll be possible. Right now, it's very difficult to do that, even with the Quelling Blade. Pulling the small camp. So on Radiant, I don't think this is as useful as it is on Dire because, well, let me show you what it is first. You could cut this tree, and now you could access the small camp from this direction. And you can pull it down, and you're going to have to cut at least this tree. And that'll let you do a pull this way. But you'll notice how tight this is. It's very easy for the creeps to get lost. And in fact, it's also a little difficult to find the creeps this way. So this pull is a little bit difficult, but it does give you, if you cut a couple more trees like this, it does give you an option to pull sooner than usual and drag it down over here, but it's really only like a couple seconds sooner than what you might used to. So in this case, I was a little late. The creeps were here. You could aggro them when they're like over here, so it's a little sooner than if you pulled them down. But you'll notice the difference is really that you pull it down, first pulling it a little this way. I think it's a lot more useful here on the Dire, because the Dire creeps you have to pull this way, unless you cut this. Where are my neutrals, guys? Unless you cut this tree and then cut, oops, not that tree. I messed up. It is this tree. That lets you pull it through here and lets you pull a little sooner, kind of like this. And now when the enemy creeps are here, or your own creeps if you're Dire, it'll aggro and pull this way. And the reason this one is a lot better than the Radiant, I already emphasized that, okay, this saves us a bit more time having to go that way. But some of the wards, let's say we're we're Radiant, and we're the 4 position, maybe we put our ward something like this. Or maybe we have one somewhere like here. You notice we don't actually see the small camp. But we expect them to pull this way, and so if they're going to pull the camp, they're going to hit this and pull this way, and we would see it pass through the wards. We can see this happening. If you cut the trees back here, you won't be spotted by these kind of wards. And by the time they realize that, hey, where's my creep camp? Look, right there. Pulled like, okay, it's a little weird because I'm on the Radiant, so they're distracted by me. But if you just have a ward like this, you actually never see this pull happening. And so unless you're paying attention and realize, wait, the 5 support's been gone for a while, where is the enemy creep wave? They should be here by now. You look over here and you're like, I don't see the pull. Where is it? Like, I'm confused. By the time you walk over here, they've finished killing off this camp. You've missed your chance to disrupt the pull. So I think it's very useful on that. And then the same deal. Cutting this tree lets you pull the hard camp up here. And if you're on the Radiant again, cutting these trees lets you pull the hard camp a little faster. It's not a huge deal, though. It can also let you pull this way. Usually these trees block you. If you cut these trees and you're on the Dire safe lane, now you can pull this camp this way instead of having to hit a very specific timing this way. You've got a bit more flexibility. But yeah, that is it for pull paths. Juke paths. Let's now do the opposite of the Radiant side up here. Juke paths for this on the Dire side are a little more useful. So if you cut... Okay, you can cut this tree to walk through here, but there is a path through the back here, and it ends here. Unless you cut this tree. And now you have access all the way back here. So that can help a lot. You could also, say, cut this tree if you're just trying to hide from the enemy and hide back here. This is a dead end, but it is somewhere you can hide, and eventually you could cut your trees and rejoin the way over here. You notice there's a lot of paths back here, and if you cut, say, this tree, now you can start making your way back here, cut this tree. There's a whole bunch of different paths here. They're a little hard to see unless you've played this game for a long time or looked at them, but I swear they are there. If you come over here, cut this one, cut that one, is another way to get in and out back here. Whether you're on the Radiant trying to defend this tower and you're sneaking your way up here, or if you're on the Dire and you cut your way down here and you're going to surprise some people standing back here. Dire on this side. Same deal. Oops. Cut some of these trees. And you can make use of this area back here. For warding, there are 2 specific spots I want to highlight, maybe 3. One is right here. If you cut this tree and you place a ward here, I think this is great. This is very difficult to see if you're on the enemy team because these trees actually create a block, so you can't actually see this ward unless you have some kind of vision spell or you have your own ward up here. So even if you place your sentry here, which gives you vision of this ward, you actually don't see the ward because of these trees, and there's like no way to get over here without cutting more of these trees. Now, it's okay if they even put their observer ward up here, as long as their sentry is not up here. Because oftentimes, if people put the ward up here, they will put the sentry on the ground, something like this, to cover more of their jungle, or maybe over here, a little less common over here, because sometimes there are wards over here. You'll notice many of these don't hit this spot right here. Now, the one I'm placing right here, it's a little iffy. It's kind of on the edge, so they might catch it. But any of these, which I would say are a lot more common, will not get this ward. So I think that's really good, especially if you're on the Radiant. Actually, it works on both sides, Radiant or Dire, and you want vision of Roshan. You're kind of losing the game, so it's difficult. You know that they're going to check up here for a ward. This ward is more likely to survive. And in the same way, this ward right here will also be very likely to survive. They have to come walk here to get vision of this area because this tree actually blocks line of sight on this ward. So even if they have a sentry, like right here, they have to stand here to see this ward unless they have a ward up here, which is, you know, possible, but not always. And oftentimes, their sentry will even be further back because they're trying to cover more of their jungle, and like no one usually wards here except us when we ward here. The last spot that I kind of regularly use is to put a ward back here because it's kind of behind these trees. So even if they end up putting like a sentry up here, doesn't actually cover this spot. Sentries over here obviously will not cover that spot. And I think this sentry is fairly common because people like to ward in this area and up here. Sentries back here are not as common. But if they do put a sentry... Alright, this one is a little far out, but if you were to put your ward more like over here, now it's kind of behind these trees. So let's say they're up here, they put their sentry here, they see nothing's up here, they see nothing's here, and they leave. The reason is because this ward is not usually very good. It doesn't see that much vision, so people don't tend to use it. Unless... Well, let's actually not have 2 of these. Let's have 1 here. Now, unless you cut some of these trees. And now you start to get a little bit better vision, even making your way into their base a bit. Or you cut this tree, you're seeing a little further out. And if you want, you can even cut these trees, which now actually gives you some solid vision in this area. But now it's going to be a little bit more obvious that maybe you put a ward here. But maybe you just cut these trees for fun, and they put a sentry and waste it here, and they find out you don't have a ward at all. That's kind of the cool thing. As this hopefully catches on, I think it is worthwhile doing. As Quelling Blade becomes more common and maybe people start to make use of these spots, it'll now become just another mind game of whether or not you're actually putting a ward down when you're cutting trees, or you're just cutting them for fun. And I recommend doing it because it is kind of fun to just cut trees around the game. There are other uses for this kind of thing as well. So let's come up here. Another common ward spot I use is right here. This gives pretty solid vision in this general area. But you'll notice that because of these trees, we're obviously missing some spots of vision. So if you actually come and cut, say, this tree, hey, look at that. You can now see through this area, and you would notice if, say, their hard carry came from over here, they farmed a small camp, walked over here, farmed this camp. You may not have seen them yet with this ward usually, but now by cutting this tree, you'll now see them farming this. So you can improve certain ward spots like this by cutting these trees. Say you come down here, maybe you want to put this ward way back here because it's a little less likely to get spotted by a common sentry in this area. But, there are all these trees. They're in our way. Same deal. Cut some of these trees down. Hey, look, our vision is a lot better. So we could do this endlessly for hours because there are so many trees on here, but just use a little bit of creativity. I think you get the idea that, now we can make use of some less common warding spots like back here because we can cut some of these down and see new areas. It's a really cool way to use this Quelling Blade. Obviously, by this 40-plus minute video, I think Quelling Blade is good, and I, at least, will be buying it. I hope you guys will try it out. Let me know what you think, and tell me if you get flamed. You can forward them this video and redirect it to me, but I do hope this will catch on to some degree, because now that Quelling Blade is cheap, I think there could be other cool uses besides these 4 that maybe we just haven't thought of yet, because this idea is relatively new, where it's cheap enough and we have backpacks to keep this Quelling Blade around. So hopefully we'll get to see some cool new ideas, and besides that, it's just fun to cut trees and pretend you're working on your woodcutting cape. So give it a shot. Thanks for watching. Have fun with it.